Governments are lying to you about how serious this is. This isn't just a Middle East conflict. This is a slow motion collapse of the system that puts food on your table, gas in your car, and products on every shelf you've ever walked past. Because while everyone's focused on what's happening on the surface, the real damage is happening underneath in the invisible web that keeps the global economy alive. And that web? It's been rotting for decades. Let's go back to 1970. Detroit, Michigan. At that time, Detroit was the beating heart of the American automobile industry. Around it, within 20 to 50 miles, were hundreds of small and medium businesses. Parts suppliers, manufacturers, assemblers. Everything was close. Everything was connected. The system worked. Today, Detroit's population is around 700,000 people. In 1970, it was nearly 2 million. That collapse didn't happen because of technology. It didn't happen because Americans stopped buying cars. It happened because corporations made a decision, a purely profit-driven decision, to move production overseas, to China, to India, to Bangladesh, to Brazil. And here's the thing, nobody forced them. No government held a gun to their head. This was a free choice. Labor was cheaper abroad, profits were higher, so they went. But when you scatter your production across the entire planet, you create something dangerous: long supply chains. And long supply chains mean vulnerability at every single point along the way. Think about it. When your product is manufactured on the other side of the world, it has to travel back to you by ship, through specific routes, through specific choke points. The Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Malacca, these weren't critical pressure points before. Now they're everything. Because if any one of them gets disrupted even partially, the entire chain seizes up. And it's not just shipping routes. Long supply chains mean political exposure. You need storage facilities in stable locations. You need friendly governments along the route. You need consistent energy access. And you need every single component to arrive on time, because in manufacturing, if one small part is missing, nothing moves. The whole line stops. That's the carburetor problem. Your car needs a carburetor. Doesn't matter if every other part is ready. No carburetor, no car. Now, here's what economists call the gap between private cost and social cost. When a corporation moves production to cut labor expenses, its internal numbers look great. Higher margins, better returns for shareholders. The CEO gets a bonus. Everyone celebrates. But the corporation never counted the other costs: the ocean pollution from decades of heavy cargo shipping, the political instability that their presence in volatile regions helps create, the collapse of local economies back home, the infrastructure that now needs to be rebuilt at public expense because private interests stripped it bare. Those costs don't show up on a corporate balance sheet. So corporations don't plan for them. They don't set aside reserves for them. They just keep maximizing profit and leave the rest for governments, communities, and ordinary people to absorb. We are now living inside that bill. The current conflict between the US, Iran, and Israel, whatever your position on it, is doing exactly one thing to the global economy. It is interrupting a supply chain that was never designed to withstand interruption. And even if the Strait of Hormuz reopened tomorrow, the damage wouldn't stop, because every company that depends on that route, directly or indirectly, is now recalculating. Running risk assessments, asking the question, can we afford to depend on this? The answer for many of them is no. So what's happening right now? Governments and corporations across Asia are fast-tracking pipeline construction, massive infrastructure projects designed to reduce dependence on sea routes for oil and natural gas. That sounds like a solution. But every dollar going into a pipeline is a dollar not going into something else. Some other infrastructure project, some other social need. Those foregone investments have real consequences too, and nobody's tracking them. Meanwhile, the United States has been selling off its strategic oil reserves at below market prices, largely to European buyers. It's a political play, but Europe doesn't know how long it lasts. Europe is already navigating tariff tensions, a fraying transatlantic relationship, and an energy landscape that's shifting by the week. And then the UAE quietly announced it was withdrawing from OPEC. That's not a footnote. That's a signal. The structure of the global oil market, which has defined defined energy economics for half a century, is beginning to crack under the pressure of everything happening at once. This is what a cascade looks like. One disruption triggers another. That triggers a repositioning. That repositioning changes a price. That price change forces a new decision, and on until the economy that took decades to build starts looking fundamentally different. The deeper problem isn't the Strait of Hormuz, it's the architecture. A global economy, this tightly connected, where a conflict in one region can starve manufacturers on the other side of the planet, was designed for maximum efficiency in peacetime. It was never designed for resilience. It was never designed to absorb shocks, because resilience costs money. And the corporations that built this system weren't paying for resilience. They were paying for profit. The mass of people, workers, consumers, taxpayers were never part of that calculation. Decisions that shaped the economic reality of billions were made by a few thousand corporations based entirely on what was best for their quarterly returns. And now the bill has come due. The question isn't just how we navigate this crisis. The question is whether this crisis finally forces a reckoning with the system that made us this fragile in the first place. That's the conversation nobody wants to have, because it implicates decades of decisions by the most powerful institutions on the planet. But the headlines are having it for us. What do you think? Is there any realistic path to rebuilding more resilient supply chains? Or is the global economy just too far gone down this road? Let me know in the comments.